This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Melody C. Miller, award-winning filmmaker, for the first time. Welcome to the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast.
Woo! Thanks for having me.
We want to let people know that we are a featured podcast on the Newsly platform. It's another podcast platform that converts this to audio. So if you use coupon code GHOST, you get 1 month free premium subscription. Stop scrolling and start listening. This podcast episode will be on Newsly within an hour or two after broadcast. So thank you again for being on the show. We're actually at episode 911 of the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast. We've been on the air since 2016. That's tracking on Apple Podcast. So, and today we're going to talk about documentary filmmaking, which is your expertise. And I think it's really interesting to talk to different people, different groups. We initially started this podcast talking to creative people, emerging and independent creative artists, primarily musicians. And then we got into filmmakers and authors and writers. But we love to talk to people who do that type of work. And this is a totally different type of work because you're doing documentary films that have a really big impact. You've been on associated with like Sony Pictures, HBO, Discovery Channel, PBS, Amazon, going on and on. And what we're going to talk about today is your film, California's Forgotten Children, probably as the primary focus, but we can talk for an hour about your other projects too. But maybe you want to introduce people about that project and the actual, what was the mission for that project?
Yeah, so California's Forgotten Children is a feature documentary that follows a diverse group of resilience of survivors of child sex trafficking and their path to freedom and all the work that they're doing now to make sure that it doesn't happen to other children. And it started out when I actually was in high school. I watched a documentary about child trafficking in India and Europe, and I started to do more research about it, and I wanted to get involved in the movement to help stop it. I love children, and just the thought that they're in pain and suffering just enrages me, and I had this fire inside of me that I had to do something. I started volunteering at a local nonprofit in Oakland called Missy, Motivating, Inspiring, Supporting, and Serving Sexually Exploited Youth. And there I learned that students in my own high school were being trafficked. I didn't know that it was happening in America, let alone like in California or Oakland. So it really opened my world and kind of surroundings of realizing that it's so close to home. It could be where you go to school. And so I volunteered there for a number of years. And when I went to UCLA Film School and graduated, I wanted to work on a project about child trafficking in California. I continued to volunteer with nonprofits, and I asked them kind of, what do you guys need? And they said that there wasn't really a documentary that focused on California in particular. So that's where this amazing journey began, and brought together so many different artists, from music to recreation B-roll to animation, and just some incredibly amazing leaders in the movement that have given their whole lives and dedication to help stop this. And so it was an honor making the film and filming what the work that they're doing to end child trafficking. Yeah.
So when you went to school to be a filmmaker and a cinematographer, is that the documentary format what you wanted to focus on as a filmmaker? Or is this, or did this project make you want to do a documentary?
So when I was at UCLA, I was initially going to go into maybe the directing program, but then I took Bill McDonald's cinematography class, and I had always been doing photography and doing like directing and cinematography. But when we got to work with 16 millimeter film and shoot projects, it was just teaching you the bare basics of filmmaking and visual interpretation, and just being able to work with film, the original, filmmaking tools, just made me want to go into cinematography. So I shot not only documentaries, but a lot of narrative films and music videos, and just visually stimulating and gorgeous projects, experimental films, and so that's what got me into cinematography. But then, like, my passion for social justice and children's rights, women's rights, uh, merged out when I was continuing to volunteer with LA Stop the Traffic at UCLA, and they collaborate with organizations in Los Angeles County that help children who are being commercially sexually exploited. And we did like fundraisers and just whatever the organizations needed help with. And so that's when I wanted to go into directing documentaries. And so using my knowledge and skills of cinematography, I wanted to make the documentary feel like you're there with the children. A lot of times in documentaries on child trafficking, the children who are being exploited, their faces are blurred, and that's of course very important that we do that. And so I worked with survivors who were open about their story and sharing it, and we recreated parts of their documentary narrative using actors, so we
Actors
could visually kind of see what a child kind
go
of
through. Yeah.
goes through, like seeing children's faces and seeing that it could be any child, just really opens people's minds rather than like a blurry face.
Yeah.
Um, so
Because
that's,
I
yeah.
guess the good question is like, if you do it like a totally into realism, an actual like like a news organization, and
Hmm.
don't do the recreations, right? You have some like artistic or cinematography, or you're as a director, it's like I want to tell the story.
Hmm.
So you go and use the actors to tell the story. So you think because you want to have an impact
Hmm.
so you feel like if you just do it with the blurred faces, maybe you're not going to get this point over to the audience because you're trying to get people to understand the issue, right?
Exactly. And we used poetic imagery. So it wasn't necessarily, say, recreating exactly what they were saying. Sometimes they might be talking about difficult times, like some children get arrested
Hmm.
for prostitution, even though they're under the age of 18. And, they get put in jail, and what that was like at 13 years old. So there's a shot of young Carissa in the documentary where there's a girl sitting at a window and the camera slowly like moves in, and it's as the um survivor leader Chris is like telling her story. So it's not exactly showing what was happening at the time, but
Yeah.
it's showing like an image of a girl just taking it all in, what's happening, taking it all in that Carissa was talking about. So and we have different moments like that throughout the film, but we also use like archival footage, news footage. We do have blurred faces and stuff like that in certain moments, but those scenes that tell 6 different survivor stories, having to see like a child's face really just pulls the heartstrings of people and makes people want to get involved in the movement. Yeah.
Well, I think as a creative person, I'm a musician and I'm a
Mhm.
producer. What we try to do is, serve the project, right? So
Mhm.
you whatever tool visually or from a
Mhm.
storytelling standpoint you use that serves the moment, right? That serves
Mhm.
what you're trying to get across. So if you use 8 millimeter film, or you use digital cameras, or you use certain types of shots, or certain types of techniques, as a musician we use different tools to convey different things, right? So I think
Mhm.
as a cinematographer and a director, like you used whatever tool you felt was going to give you the right focus for that moment, right?
Mhm. Exactly. And same part, we used animation for the documentary in certain parts. Some of the survivor leaders were describing just how they were feeling. And we have this animation of a girl. She talks about how running away from home, she thought she was running away from the pain, but she didn't know that behind the door was so much more worse that was
Hmm.
happening. And it's then the girl opens the door, she falls out of the door, and there are people grabbing her arms, grabbing her legs, and it's this little girl falling into darkness.
Wow.
And that's also another tool of poetic imagery and visual storytelling, where it's not showcasing rape and violence and the horrible
Hmm.
things that were happening, but it's visually helping the audience kind of see this little girl struggling, in
I
the
think
darkness.
that's the poetry of like creativity. Like a
Yeah.
lot of times, like we're, whether, as a musician, whether you use analog, digital, or real instrument, like, how you record on real tape or use digital,
Mhm.
depending on what you're trying to get across
Mhm.
or what you're trying to convey, you do a video, like you said, you animate video, or you have realistic or actual real blacked out, narrative, like you're a news reporter asking a direct question about the exact event. But different things, tools are used for however you're going to create something. As a
Mhm.
creative person, I think it's a really awesome media because you're pulling in, like you said, music, animation, different types of shots, different types of cameras. There's a lot of creativity to get across what you're trying to show people, the
Mhm.
whole powerful issue of sex trafficking, which a lot of people would want to say, oh, it's like, somebody comes in a van and grabs you out of nowhere. And we've had some people on the podcast before that have talked about sometimes people don't have a good understanding of what it could be, that you actually it could be somebody that's close to you, not this stranger in the van that comes and grabs you. But there's a lot more complexity to what the situations that people can find themselves into sex trafficking that maybe they didn't understand.
Exactly. And there are so many various different ways people can be trafficked, whether they're trafficked sadly by their own parents or they're trafficked through their foster parents. They could be coerced by someone that they love, a mentor or a boyfriend,
Mhm.
um, through media, um, like through the internet, meeting someone online, thinking that they are a young teenager just like yourself, and you go to meet them and it's the wrong case, or in the entertainment industry,
Yeah, you get a business
modeling,
contract,
music
you're a model
videos.
or an actor, you think
Yeah.
you go to a foreign country and then they lock you up. That you get conned into a bad contract that's more than a bad contract. It actually puts you into like a slavery situation. It's like you're being, a criminal activity that you got conned into, that you got
Exactly.
are the victim of. And a lot of people don't understand it. They want to just think it's one thing. And
Hmm.
like anything in the world, things are more than what they appear to be. And it's
Hmm.
always great to be a document in the documentaries because you try to teach people.
Hmm.
Is that is that
Exactly.
is that what your whole goal is, to actually, it's like a learning experience?
Yeah, and with the film, we've had tremendous impact. We've screened at over 20 festivals, and then we've done over 100 community screenings with all sorts of nonprofit organizations, to children's hospitals, to police departments, to the Social Security Department, all the way to the United States Senate in front of Congress. And, even at Facebook headquarters, and each one, everybody has a way how they could help and the commercial sexual exploitation of children, from the police department, learning how to work with victims, not treating them as criminals, creating a safe environment, working with local nonprofits to get them the support services that they need, to the hospitals. If you see a child coming in with bruises, or there's also sadly a lot of doctors who don't want to touch children who are commercially sexually exploited because they think that they're prostitutes. And so breaking that stigma and educating doctors about that, and also tremendous. I mean, one of our biggest accomplishments is getting the documentary into schools, and that's what we're really pushing for. But from the screenings that we've had in high schools, we've worked with the local crisis center, and they're there every day during the screening of the movie, along with the police department. So children have come out,
Oh,
um,
that's a good
that they
that's a good
were being
service.
trafficked, or it wasn't just trafficking, homelessness or
Mhm.
abused at home, various different things that were happening to them. They were able to relate to the survivor stories. And because there was a diverse group of survivors with different stories, kids were able to relate to different parts who might have been going through that, and they came out and got the help that they needed, thanks to the amazing Valley Crisis Center and the work that they're doing. So that was kind of our biggest accomplishment for the film, to be able to help someone see themselves a survivor leader's story and see that they also do have a future. They can get out there. It's a tough journey once, the healing process. In the documentary, Nola Brentley, who is part of Nola Brentley Speak, she talks about that. It takes years for self-care and overcoming what happened. And sometimes, a lot of times, people who've been trafficked don't realize they're being trafficked because they've been manipulated, or they only see it as the kidnapping in like the big movies like Taken. Those do create awareness and are great, but there are other ways that
Yeah.
are harmful, of that children and anyone could get trafficked. So it's good knowledge to know that. And also in schools, we've had so many students just become really passionate leaders. They say, I want to work for the government and I'm going to change all these laws so we can help all these kids. And just the new passion fighters who are going to be the next generation, who are going to keep pushing change. And as a filmmaker, as a documentary filmmaker, that's like makes the many years and the many tears and the hard work all worth it, to get that reaction from just one or two people.
Well, I think it's really awesome when a piece of work is like a living piece of work, which means that it's not a static piece, that when you actually can affect change, that you bring it to a school and then people come forward, and and then they can get help. If you get people to want to volunteer or go into human rights, they want to go, and not just in the US, maybe they want to go global, that they see the whole picture, and you were focused on California, but then people say, wow, this is a whole planetary issue, where this is
Mhm.
like a human rights issue. And it did mention that there are hundreds of human rights organizations and environmental organizations that have kind of been connected to what you're doing. And it's all like, holistic. I've talked to many people on the podcast over the years. And the thing that happens is that there's a lot of things that people want to put into narrow focus and don't see like the holistic connection between, the government, society, individuals. There's a lot of interconnected pieces that people probably don't know. There's laws, there's not non-governmental organizations, there's all kinds of things that people need to be aware of. Like, where do these people stand on this? Where can you get help, or do they not provide it, or are they not
Mhm.
focusing on it? So maybe we can talk about more about the whole structure in California. You mentioned earlier that you didn't even know that it had existed in California, and then you were kind of brought into to this situation where, like, wow, you learned about it, and then you're like, I want to help, I want to do something. And the film started from that kind of origin, right?
Exactly. And that's what I was hoping, by focusing on California. We've screened the movie in other states and also in other countries. And I wanted people, look, we're just focusing on one state, and it's just so vast what's happening there. Focus on where you're living, focus on your state, on your country, and, see what needs to get done there to help stop it. So that's like when we'd have screenings in other states, they're like, yes, that happens here too. And we don't, they're still arresting children and they're putting them in jail. We don't have any services. These are the things that they need. And it gets people talking. It gets people thinking. It's bringing people together, especially prior to the pandemic, when we had more in-person screenings and they're starting to come back. Just
Mhm.
the Q&A and like the discussions that all the audience members have together, it's like amazing, just the connections that they're able to do, like you were saying, from different departments and work departments, and how they could get involved. Like even someone who's a yoga teacher or an art teacher can work with a local nonprofit and provide classes for the clients that they're serving, so everybody can get
Yeah.
involved.
What's interesting to me is the kind of Justice Department or the police
Mhm.
situation where they're mislabeling the victims as criminals. And then that to me seems to be like a teaching opportunity for the DA, of an area. If that's how they're treating child trafficked victims, and they're treating them like they're, a prostitute, or putting them under a law that's actually not appropriate, that they
Yeah.
need to be educated in terms of what they're doing and understand. That's like kind of holistic picture, because they're in a narrow focus. Like, the problem is people get stuck in narrow lanes, and like
Mhm.
the law enforcement's like, well, this is X. It's like,
Mhm.
no, it's not really X. There's something else, right? You need to understand what the situation is. It's a matter of like educating people. Maybe it's not the right tool for the job to put that person in jail. That's not the right remedy. That's not the right approach. So how do you educate, the law enforcement and the general society to understand what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. And our film has been used in trainings in police departments, and it's been embraced by many DAs across California and in other states who have showed the film and made improvements to their departments. And bringing in survivor leaders, people with lived experience, to work with the police department and have them tell them kind of what improvements need to be made. I mean, I think I recently saw an article in Merced. The police department over there created a room for survivors of any crime, with a couch. It has paintings. It has fish. It has a nice table. They have a coffee machine. They have chocolates, candies, cookies. Just making a warm, comfortable, zen environment, instead of a metal table
Yeah, like
and
a
sitting
cold kind
across
of,
from the light.
yeah, because
And yeah, so
the
there.
cold environment, yeah, the justice system, they might like, well, we don't really need that, but they're not talking to sociologists, not talking to
Mhm,
psychiatrists, not talking to, people who would say, the social worker point of view, the person with the master's degree or the doctorate, and
mhm,
you look at the situation, and you guys aren't actually, you're criminalizing something. You're not treating somebody as a person.
mhm.
So if somebody's a person, they don't want that kind of cold metal table, nothing on
Yeah,
the walls, like you're in a cell. Like,
mhm,
is that really appropriate when the person's already gone through a lot? The
mhm.
matter is, oh, we don't have the money for that. It doesn't take a lot of money to actually have a little care.
No.
And so I think sometimes people try to, oh, it's going to cost us this. And it's like, start to think about, like, is that really expensive, or you just hadn't thought about taking the time to
Yeah,
understand the issue?
exactly. And honestly, if they said they were gonna do that, they'd have donations inside. They'd have people donating things, designing rooms. People will give to have that, to help
Yeah.
survivors and victims of any crime horrific, to have that safe space. And a lot of police departments have changed. It's according to California law, children are not to be arrested for
Mm.
prostitution, but there are still you know police departments that need to be trained or don't have the resources yet. And so in some cases children are still arrested, but there are so many good improvements that are being made now. And I encourage all departments to either watch the film or go to a training, or work with their local nonprofit on how they can improve to help children who are being commercially sex exploited, or children victims of any crime, how they can make it more comfortable and safe and have the resources so that they could be on a good journey
Well,
to
I think,
healing and recovering. Yeah.
well, you think you have to start, for anything to happen, you have to kind of bring it into the light. I think a
Mhm.
lot of things, I've talked to tons of people on the show where, people, like, as soon as you take something that was in the darkness or not being discussed, and you
Mhm.
shed the light on it and you communicate,
Mhm.
then people find out about it. Like,
Mhm.
if you the problem is, some people are scared of actually bringing it up because of shame, or
Mhm.
because of mores in the society, or like, how does
Mhm.
that, the people have certain beliefs, maybe
Mhm.
those beliefs they think are truths, but they're not truths. They're
Mhm.
beliefs. And
Mhm.
there's a truth, there's a belief, and there's actions you do upon things that you think are real, but they're not. Like,
Mhm.
so when you start to actually show people what the reality of child trafficking is, and they
Mhm.
were getting miseducated by whatever their belief system, or what
Mhm.
somebody told them, and you have to start showing them what the reality is, and then they can make appropriate responses. But not talking about it is like a no starter, a non-starter. You can't, like, what you're doing is you're bringing that to the people. Your film kind of puts it so that then you have that first step. Watch
Mhm.
your film, then thinking, like, what can we change? What
Mhm.
can we do better? What are we doing wrong? You kind of have like that lesson learned, because
Exactly.
you have to have this kind of thing where you actually look at what you're doing. Are you doing what you could do?
Mhm. Yeah, and by learning and improving and helping, it will it will, if they're feeling shame of anything or they have some sort of different beliefs, doing the right thing and learning from people with lived experience, like learning more about the issue, listening to different opinions, and that will help the discussion and kind of how we can improve it together as a society. But not talking about it isn't helping it, it's making it forgotten. And we don't want to forget these kids ever again.
Well, it's interesting. You said that you went to the Senate and actually Vice President Kamala Harris hosted was part of the showing. Is that the story?
Yeah, so she booked us a room at Congress to show the film, and she wasn't able to make it, but she was able to initiate the room process of getting people to come see the documentary on child sex trafficking. And that was just like a huge honor. Survivor leader T. Ortiz Walker Pettigrew was there, and case manager Christopher Sean Watson was there, and we had a really important discussion with everyone who came to the screening there. They were from different departments, from different states, and after screening the film, everybody exchanged numbers and they met up and worked on different projects. And I think it was a really great experience to be able to go to such a highly esteemed government location and share the movie. And since then, um, our current president, Joe Biden, had last year launched the Countering Human Trafficking Act
Hmm.
of 2021, which was passed, and it like expands the Homeland Security Department and the Center for Countering Human Trafficking Department, and creates a larger staffing unit so that they could help and combat human trafficking, which is great.
That's awesome because you went from California state level to the federal level with the vice president giving hosting it, and
Mhm.
then getting the president of the United States to actually, you know, increase awareness and actually do something with the law, with the agencies that they can control. So
Yeah.
that it shows you that when you take something that you believe in and you start at a local level, you can get to the federal level, and then you've also gotten to the global level with all these other agencies you've talked to, from environmental agencies to human rights organizations. So this is kind of like the lesson is when you believe and you get passionate about something, it kind of, you know, if you show up, things will happen. When you go and you put your heart into it, and being a creative person, we know you put your heart into your work.
And I just want to be clear, like our film just played a tiny part in educating people. It was so many different organizations and individuals who work day in day out with legislation and trying to get the government to push for this bill, who should take credit for
It's a
doing it.
collaboration,
It's a
collaborative effort.
collaboration for everyone. We played just a tiny part in showing our documentary, but it's really all the organizations and people who work day in and out to pass that. And there's still more work that needs to be done. There's still more expanding that has to happen on state and community levels. But I just send my heart to all those people who are working tirelessly every day. And it's really hard. And I, if it wasn't for them, so many kids wouldn't be safe. And it's up to us and everyone to work together to help eradicate this huge and horrible problem.
Well, it's good to have an impact. I understand there's a collaborative effort with all the other organizations, but
Mhm.
when you're able to have a film that's actually been able to connect like
Yeah.
your film's connecting, it is a part of it. And I
Mhm.
understand your modesty, but it's always good to to at least be aware of it,
Yeah.
and if you're part of and it's good that you're giving props to everybody that's involved in the whole movement to get people aware of child trafficking, because that's the whole picture. It's like it's not just like in music, people want to be number one. If you're an
Mhm.
artist, that's not the point when you're doing like a documentary. You're trying to educate And
Mhm.
if anybody else is helping with it, it's all part of the same effort.
Exactly. Yeah.
But like what you're doing is like this idea of trauma informed. Like your documentary is helping people understand what it means to be trauma informed. And maybe you can talk to people, what does that term mean to you within the context of what California's forgotten children?
Yeah, I think, when we started screening the documentary, it was really shocking to me that almost at every screening, someone who experienced either trafficking or some sort of trauma would come out and start sharing their story with me or whoever was there as speakers. And so it became very clear very fast that we needed to have boots on the ground, like trauma informed facilitators that were at the screenings to provide resources right away to victims
Mm,
of commercial sexual exploitation. And so having a training to become more informed on working with uh, people who might have experienced similar traumas and getting them the help that they need. I found that so we collaborated with a lot of organizations to make sure we had that support. And I worked with Rachel Thomas, who shares her story in the documentary,
mm,
and she also is a graduate from UCLA. She has a master's degree in education and curriculum development, and so she developed the curriculum for our movie to screen in high schools from feedback from students. So we screened it to thousands of kids and got their feedback on like what were their feelings before watching the movie and after watching the film, kind of what they wish they had support wise, and kind of what kind of activities would they be interested in, like art or going out volunteering, like after watching the movie. And we saw a huge rate of like all of like everybody just becoming very passionate and more
mhm,
educated about the issue. A lot of boys commented that they didn't see prostitutes as human beings or children who are being commercially sexually exploited, and now they saw them as human beings, which was like a huge just change.
mm.
um, that was really big. So, using that feedback, Rachel designed activities for the students so that they either didn't feel alone. Sometimes learning about all these horrible things, it makes you feel like, what can you do about it? It's such a big problem. So, really bringing in that community effort, discussion, questions, and also activism, how they could volunteer, how they could create posts on social media to raise awareness. And yeah, that so it was trauma informed for that. And also on every screening of the movie, like they get handouts on all the resources, how to keep safe, and having also counselors there to talk with the students whenever they need it was really important.
Have you ever had some like young people that watch the film and kind of like you as a filmmaker come to you and say, "Hey, this has actually triggered the spark in me to want to go into documentary filmmaking"? Have you ever run into people that have looked at what you're doing and say, "Oh, like now I know I want to do something like what you're doing"?
Yeah, I've ran into a couple of people that saw the film and wanted to do what I was doing. They wanted to explore like also different topics of human trafficking. Like in the documentary, we cover boys who are being commercially sexually exploited, but not as in depth as girls who are being commercially sexually exploited.
Mm,
And so one young man came to me and, we started discussing. I'm like, how about you make a documentary about it?
mm,
I just like how I watched someone's documentary in high school and that sparked my journey to make my own documentary years later.
mhm.
I sparked his journey to start
Yeah,
making a documentary and exploring a topic, and, or having different perspectives. So I encourage all filmmakers to, you know, if they want to get involved in, make something to, explore other topics, or, redo my topic, it's totally fine.
yeah.
As long as we continue to talk
Agreed.
about it.
Yeah, just the fact that you did the work and then it sparks another person to say,
Mhm.
"I am very much interested in the documentary film format. Maybe I can pick my perspective on it." like the young man is like, oh, I think maybe we should look at this issue, and so, well, you go and take that, um,
Mhm.
and it's like, that's always a cool like a mentoring kind of thing. The exact fact that you create it, like when you're an artist, like you're a musician, you create a piece of work, you inspire people to actually create other work in the same vein, but it's different. It's a
Mhm.
different take on it.
Yeah.
As like a jazz musician, you create like a standard, and so everybody wants to do the standard and then tweak the standard, and make something else. So
Mhm.
it's always that inspiration is maybe it wasn't initially intended that you're going to inspire filmmakers because
Mhm.
you were trying to elaborate on the issue with the forgotten children. But
Mhm.
in another added benefit is like, the documentary film format is a really cool place to be. Is
Mhm.
that in the industry in film? Is it harder to get into documentary filmmaking than other types of filmmaking?
Um, well, I think it's easy to start making a documentary, get your camera out, shoot a project that you're passionate about. I've worked on films that are narrative, and with that, you need to find actors, locations, casting, crew. Those are things you could still do when you're first starting out, but documentary, the people are already there, the location's already there, the story's already there. So take out your camera and you could start that. But making a living in documentary filmmaking is very difficult, especially because a lot of our work is around social justice and giving. And as a documentary filmmaker, you're so giving, you're so passionate, and it's hard to
How to
make a
monetize it?
living
Yeah.
that way.
Can you get venues to, like, I don't know, can you get theaters to show it? Can you get
Mhm,
channels to actually put it on? Can you get it into like a distribution network compared to like, oh, I'm going to be a commercial filmmaker. I'm going to go and do advertising, or I'm going to do music videos. I'm going to do something that's more commercially viable. But it's
mhm,
kind of like an independent musician. Like if you're an avant-garde musician, right?
mhm,
You want to be like a Velvet Underground and Andy Warhol, you're going to have a very narrow audience because
mhm,
that's not top 10. That's
mhm,
something else. But it's still what you want to do. And
mhm,
so people are passionate about the thing that they really feel, right? So it seems like, documentary film to you is that you have a passion about it, right?
mhm. Yeah, and I still have a balance of work. Like I do corporate work, I do work as a cinematographer, I shoot other people's movies, and that's kind of where I get my income from. But like
Me
for
too.
the projects I really give my heart into, a lot of that instead it's opened doors to other opportunities, and that's how I see it, and it also creates amazing change. So that's how I make it. It's okay. We
Yeah.
didn't. I can't survive through it, but it's opened other doors and opportunities for myself and all the people who are involved in the movies.
That's like the starving artist thing. Like everybody has a day gig or the day job that helps do their passion. Like you have your
Mhm.
passion project, and then you have what helps you keep doing your passion project. And because the world today has less gatekeepers, I'm
Mhm.
just wondering, like in terms of like in the music industry, there's less gatekeepers because you can just go out and put it out yourself independently.
Mhm.
Is it the same kind of thing, a documentary film, when you start to do it, okay, if I create it, I'll be able to find a place to distribute it or to put it out because I'm
Yeah.
an independent creator.
I finally learned how to do that. 15 years it took. More doors and opportunities are opening up for independent filmmakers to be able to put their movies on larger platforms and do distribution. But it did take me a while because it was my first feature film. Everybody says, oh, you need a sales agent, you need a distributor, there's a certain path you have to go through. And I sat around waiting for a distributor. I tried talking to different distributors, and a lot of that they just don't like. It really depends on the distributor, but they didn't really see your film for its value for impact, more of its value for how much money they can make, which I
Mhm.
understand. They're going to invest a lot of money into it and they want to be able to make a profit. So but so I figured out how to do it myself.
Mhm.
And also because it was my first film, I didn't have a lot of funding, so a lot of the work I had to learn how to do myself. So we did self distribution for the documentary. So people would order virtual a screening license, and then I would make the DVD. I'd like stick the sticker on. I'd like cut the paper for the
Yeah.
DVD and ship it to
Independent.
them. Write a thank you note. Did that, but I also learned how to get it on PBS on my own through.
Awesome.
NETA, the National Education Telecommunication Association, they're like a great door for independent filmmakers to get their work on TV. And over 44 channels picked it up, and they showed the movie. In order to get those 44 channels, we emailed them, we sent letters, we called each one, explaining the documentary, asking if they could air it. And then I finally recently figured out how to get it on iTunes and Amazon and Apple TV and Tubi and all that through
Yeah, I
Bitmax.
see you got on the Smithsonian channel too.
I've worked for the Smithsonian Channel
Okay, you
on a
work with them.
different
Oh, you
documentary.
collaborate on something different. Okay.
Yeah. So I figured out how to do that for the film, and kind of figured I was able to take that and use that for my next film. And now that I'm working on my third feature documentary, now I've already figured out the distribution, which is generally like you don't really know when you're starting out, but now I know how to get there. And so I'm kind of working backwards. I know the distribution, I know the audience, and now I could focus on the creative fun stuff.
Well, sometimes that's the way art is. I mean, when you're a creative person, sometimes like you don't think of those kind of monetary conversion type of tactics of like getting into the distribute. Like if you create a piece of art, say I wasn't necessarily thinking about trying to make money, and it happens to get an audience, or it happens to fit into a channel. Everybody said, "Oh, that's what you should think of first." But I think if you're thinking about an idea or a topic, you might focus more on that to actually get that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just the way the world is. Or they want you to be more business minded. And sometimes creative people are not necessarily business minded at the beginning.
Yeah, and that was for my first two films. And we even had a sales agent that strung us along for over a year, and we weren't able to do anything with our film until the contract ended for my second movie, and then later on we did our own thing and we won an Emmy. So
That
I mean,
helps right there, right?
I mean, it'd be great if I could finally find an amazing distributor, but just knowing that it worked for my first two films. I know how to get on PBS. I have the connections with the educational distribution market. I know how to do these things. So just having that makes it less stressful, I guess, for the third time around for a feature.
Does an Emmy really open the doors for your distribution? You would think like if you win a Grammy or win an Emmy or win those big awards, does that really help you open up markets?
I don't know yet. It's only been a week.
You just got it. You just got it.
I just got it. So I don't know yet. I'm hoping that, I'm going to be doing grant writing for this new film and all this stuff. So I hope that if they know that I've won an Emmy and that,
I guess as somebody that doesn't know, I mean, I assume like when you win a Grammy, like as a musician, you think you're going to get a better deal. Like you think you're going to get a wider, they're going to put that stamp on all your albums. Hey, he's a Grammy award winning. So then you could get into places you couldn't get into before. That's the assumption.
Yeah.
But I've actually heard in music sometimes it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So sometimes like you win it, you get critical acclaim, and then they still say, "Well, this still doesn't sell." so sometimes it's like, well, it's what I believe in. I'm going to keep on doing what I believe in, and find people come to you. It seems like you were able to get people to come to you because you're really passionate about what you're talking about.
Yeah, I would say that I guess when you're really passionate, you become like a magnet, and other passionate people join your magnet, and then you're like a superpower magnet. So that's kind of what happened, I think, for the projects. And I'm really excited about this new documentary I'm starting. It's following a mother who survived breast cancer and her journey through pregnancy to postpartum, and kind of what that's like becoming a mom and having been through cancer. And I'm just really excited about it.
What's the name of this project? Do you have a name?
I don't know yet. Right now, I'm calling it Untitled Supermom Project. But I haven't come up with a name yet, and it will reveal itself when the time is right.
That's really interesting because I'm a cancer survivor. At age 27, I had a level 3 sarcoma, and I beat it. Now I'm age 55, and and then my wife got cancer like last year, so that
Oh.
was like super rare that we both ended up experiencing cancer. But she's in remission now. But it's like cancer is
Mhm.
such a big thing, and it's cool that you're taking on another issue, which I have experienced in. But yeah, it's just so like when you deal with the documentary film format,
Mm.
you're using it to elaborate on societal or impacts that's your point of view, right? For the form. I'm just trying to understand how you use the form of a documentary.
Yeah, I mean, I think like there are certain topics that I'm really attracted to, and I just kind of go with my heart. Like my second film was about the first female beat jazz poet, Ruth Wise,
Hmm.
and her life story. I walked into one of her jazz performances and just fell in love with this 80-something-year-old woman with crystals on her head, and she had this husky Austrian voice,
Hmm.
telling her story through poetry, and the musicians just going with the flow. Not everything was improvisational. I just needed to know who she was and started this epic film project where she unlocked a lot of my imagination, and we pushed a lot of boundaries in documentary filmmaking to tell her story. It became like its own. The documentary film came like its own jazz.
Like a stream of
Uh,
consciousness fusion jazz thing.
yeah, and
That's always, yeah, I would love that.
incorporating like elements like dance and
Mhm.
art and music and filmmaking, and just really weave that in, but still making it cohesive story. But it was very surprising and exciting for people, and also kind of a little funny too. Some people were writing about how it had a lot of humor. So even though it does talk about some serious topics, she's just was a joy to be around, and definitely will make you laugh.
Do you think you would ever do more documentaries about musicians that you're interested in that kind of way?
Oh, yeah, of course. If I find the right one, and I worked on like as a cinematographer a documentary about Jenny Rivera, who is a famous musician, and it's kind of what comes along the way with Ruth Wines. We developed a relationship. She was in her 90s
Hmm.
when she passed away, but like she could sometimes be in her early 20s, like
Yeah,
even though she was in her 90s, and like we
yeah.
became best friends, but almost like a grandma. So it was a close journey and experience with that. And after she passed away, we created a nonprofit to honor her, and we give out annual grants to help poets and artists in need. And we give out different themes each year. We have like a committee that selects the poems, and we help youth and like more established poets as well. And we're working on helping schools and worn, torn locations. The foundation is called Ruthwise Foundation, and if you look it up, people can apply. We're giving out $6,000 in rewards, and working on a big event planned for International Children's Day, because this year's theme is war is bad for children, so what's good for children? Because Ruth Wise is survived the Nazis in World War II, and
Hmm.
wrote a lot of her poetry about you know escaping the Nazis, and a lot of her family didn't make it too.
Hmm.
And she's been a huge advocate for anti-war, and she dyed her hair green in order to raise awareness, and she kept her hair it turned into teal later on. She did her own shade, but for like almost all her life, she watched the documentary "The Boy with the Green Hair" in the 1940s, and that was a anti-war movie where one
Hmm.
day a boy wakes up with green hair, and people ask him why you have green hair, and he says because war is bad for children. So that's kind of where the theme comes from, and we're excited to see what poetry comes in to raise awareness on that.
Yeah, because always, it's a, being a musician, taking on social issues is part of like, some musicians, might do that, and I tend to do that with my work. But poetry, I've talked to a lot of artists and even musicians, they always start with poems. They
Mhm.
usually start as a poet and then they transform it into lyrics. So the whole artistic vision of
Mhm.
connecting poetry to like activism is
Mhm.
like I'm a big fan of Dylan and Neil Young,
Mhm.
and the idea like Neil Young was like "For Dead in Ohio."
Mhm.
Some people say, "Oh, musicians shouldn't talk about things. You should be an entertainer." But there's a whole tradition of artists that do say things like
Mhm.
Dylan and during the civil rights era. He had all these songs that were talking about times are changing. So
Mhm.
if we're dead in Ohio, like you can talk about what's going on. You don't just have to entertain people. You can
Mhm.
actually inform people. And some people don't they feel that. But yeah, it's just interesting to be that you as a filmmaker, you could go and explore all kinds of interesting things. So like I'm looking forward to a lot of the work you're talking about in the future. Do you have other ideas that you're kind of sitting on in terms of what you want to work on in the next like 5 years?
Yeah, I have other ideas that I'm sitting on, but they haven't, like, I've kind of reached out, but they haven't come to fruition yet. So I don't want to say anything yet until
Mm,
like I kind of have some concrete, like, yeah, you could come film me type thing. But like the project about Amber, um, I'm really excited about. And I mean, what really attracted me is I recently became a mother myself, and
mhm.
just seeing her story, breastfeeding with just one breast, like going through that difficult journey of, having a kid after experiencing cancer. I was just really drawn to her story and her resilience, and how powerful that is. And now we've become friends, and
Yeah,
we just started the process of filming. And she's also, a Navy veteran, and she's a bodybuilder. Her whole family are jiu-jitsu fighters, and she's like
wow.
super badass amazing. So I'm excited to
That
start the
sounds like a
future
really
together.
interesting story. I mean, being a cancer survivor myself, and then I got married and I had my daughter with my wife. That was like a big deal for me. I actually changed my after I had cancer, it made me feel like I should do things differently. And one of the things
Mhm.
I did differently is I got married and we had a kid and then we lived in Tokyo for like 2 years. But I did things I didn't think I was going to do. That kind of gave me another lease on life. That it
Mhm.
actually made me feel that, oh, I should try things that I was scared of doing
Yeah.
because I survived. Like that survivor kind of story of, oh, I the things are, you can actually overcome a lot of things, and once you
Mhm.
go in that kind of spirit, so I totally, you know, uh, understand that kind of perspective, kind of living through it. But yeah, I think it's a really cool story to tell.
Mhm.
Um, from because a lot of people, sometimes they get maybe to looking at a cancer survivor, they think we're victims,
Mhm.
and you want to show a different kind of angle that you can be triumphant. That you don't have to be like the victim, right?
Exactly. That's why she shares her story, because she want, like, the moment, like, uh, she was it was removed, like, she decided not to you know get it put back, because she it was just her now, and she wanted to share her story and her journey with others to empower them. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And also, she was so young when it happened, and
Mm.
I know many other women who are in their early 30s, 20s, that are also getting breast cancer, and it's just really scary because they don't really check for it until your 40s. And a lot of times it's kind of overlooked, and I think it's a topic that we have to discuss about. Mm.
Yeah, more education because a lot of times people, I was lucky that I found my sarcoma and it was external. If it had been internal, you wouldn't be talking to me because I wouldn't have checked for it. I'm 27 years old. I wouldn't think I had cancer.
Mhm.
Right. And so there's a lot of things I learned about it, but I was able to like I initially noticed this thing growing and I was like, oh, what is this? And then,
Mhm.
I actually went to the doctor and I was like, wow, I'm glad I actually did. But a lot of people are so, adverse to like science and doctors and they want to say this and say that. But like you ought to really read up on
Mhm.
everything when they deal with cancer. You shouldn't just listen to something on some blog. You need to
Mhm.
do the hands-on research. And I hope like what you're doing with your documentary is like tell people like the real consequences of not paying attention to your body.
Exactly. And I'm gonna like each one of my films has like a different type of style, like a different type of poem, I would say. And so this one, I'm gonna tell it through her and her family. Like I do have a sit down interview, but I'm not gonna use it. That's gonna help me weave the story together. And I'm taking, like, we're going to a doctor's appointment in 2 weeks. You know, we're gonna talk with the doctor about like the Black maternal health crisis right now, and also about, you know, post cancer, having a child, and you know, go to like a Navy ship and, you know, film her talking about what it was like working on a Navy ship and, you know, being pregnant, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, so it's going to be a different style than my other 2 documentaries, and it's going to be told through her and her family, and you know, the people around her on this journey. And I'm really excited about it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we love to like when you get, you know, to the, you know, when you're ready to present it to the world, like we're talking about this one with California's Forgotten Children. We love to have people come back on the show. We have repeat guests talk about whatever they're working on. So
Mhm.
yeah, we think that that's always a cool thing to do because, you know, we've been around like since 2016, and we want to let people know, like, if you go to www.californiasforgottenchildren.com, what will people find there when they go to your website?
Oh, when you go to the film's website, you can watch the movie. You can host a screening of the film, either raising funds for your local nonprofit or hosting a free screening for people to come. There's information and helpful guidebooks on there. You could also bring it to your schools, bring it into your library. There are resources on and facts about child trafficking, and also safety resources. Also, more educational curriculums from different organizations that we know about and we share, and also learning more about the organizations in the film and other nonprofits if you wanted to get involved, and or work with some of the survivor leaders in the film. They all have their own amazing organizations that you should go out, donate, support, or collaborate with them on projects. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for telling us all that. I think it's really important for people. I've always said on my podcast that, like, if you want to know more about the guests we've talked to, do click on the links that we provide. But that one right now, if you're listening or watching, you can't click on it. But when we're fully published on our partner sites like Apple and Spotify and iHeartRadio and places like that, you'll actually be able to click on that and it will click right through, right to the website. So we do encourage people to actually click on that link, and we do appreciate the fact you came on the Family Electric Go show today, and we hope that our audience will watch your film and actually book showings and screenings, and, you know, get into your work, because we like to present people to our audience that we think are important people to check out and check their work out, and we're very happy that you came on the show today.
Yeah, thank you so much for providing a platform for artists like myself to share the work that we're doing and talk about it, and hopefully other people will be inspired by it.
Yeah, that's always the mission, is to, you know, take this creative community across the world and introduce each other. We've actually, you know, had other filmmakers on. We hope that people watch this and maybe people contact you. You never know. We've had lots of people collaborate, you know, with people they've actually seen on the show.
Mhm.
They've actually
Mhm.
contacted and say, hey, you know, I can do X, and they find, oh, well, that's something we could work on. So I mean, that's the whole idea of creating like a podcast community of guests and hosts that have, oh, this is interesting. Maybe I should get into this. Maybe I should talk to this person to find out, you know, more about whatever they're doing, and maybe I could do something that's a synergy. You never know. But thank you.
Synergy. Yeah, I'll also throw out my personal website, mcmfilmmaker.com. That's where you could see my cinematography work and the other projects that I've worked on.
Oh, send me that on the private chat, and I'll add that to the actual distribution on the podcast,
Okay.
and then I'll update all the links so that they have that.
Great.
Okay, thank you again. That's really
Thank
good.
you. Yeah.
Actually, I can throw it up real quick before we leave so people see it because I just got it. So I'm gonna put that up. No, yeah.
Oh,
So there you go.
yeah.
So if that's your main site, right? Yeah, right there. That's your main site. So that's mcmfilmmaker.com, www.mcmfilmmaker.com. Go check that one out. That's also going to be on our overall link. So thank you again for being on the show, and hope you have a great night.
Thank you. You
And like
too.
I said, this will be fully published on all the platforms that you can watch or watch a podcast. So you'll be able to watch us anywhere. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Take care.
Have a good night.
Bye. Good night.